Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Legends Lore. Today we are doing another tier list. I just did my MCU rankings. Going to do the Spider-Man rankings today. I just saw Across the Spider-Verse twice. It's a great movie. I can't wait to rank it amongst the rest of the Spider-Man canon. And here we go. Let's dive right into the tier list. Here we go. As usual, we're starting in release order. So we're starting with 2002's Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Mans were a huge part of my childhood. Something I dramatically remember growing up with all the merchandise, commercials everywhere. Everything was Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man 1. Tobey's portrayal of Spider-Man in here, I think, is great. There are a few structural problems, I think, with the plot, but the dialogue, the goofiness of the dialogue, what Sam Raimi was going for with like a semi goofy horror B-movie vibe. I think Willem Dafoe is great as Green Goblin. He is amazing. Costume could be a lot better, but overall, I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies nostalgia-wise. I'm going to put this in A. Now dig on this. Next, we have Spider-Man 2, one of my favorite comic book movies ever. This is going in S tier for me. I love Spider-Man 2. I think it's a huge step up from Spider-Man 1. Doc Ock is incredible as a villain, and I think as great as Willem Dafoe is as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina is just as good as Doc Ock. Plus, the costume and the effects are so much better, so it works a little bit better overall. Peter's arc here is a bit more mature. I do like his relationship with Mary Jane, how it develops with Harry and him experiencing the death of his father from the last movie. There's also just some of my favorite lines ever in this movie. Like, I love the beginning when he's delivering the pizzas and getting out of the closet and dropping everything. All of that stuff is so funny. This movie is hilarious. I quote this one all the time. So yeah, definitely S tier. It's one of the best comic book movies of all time for me. After that, we've got Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is one that kind of go back and forth on because it's endlessly quotable. I've seen it many times because it is like, if you watch it with that B-movie look, this movie is hilarious. Like, I think the writing is still pretty on point for what they're going for. You never know what type of over-the-top goofy thing they're throwing at you next. And I think, it goes a little far in some places in Spider-Man 3, but mostly the problem with Spider-Man 3 are plot problems. It's the way the film is structured. Obviously, he didn't want Venom in the movies, so that ended up being a problem because it feels very tacked on. Although we can't thank the studio enough for forcing Venom into this movie and giving us the Bully Maguire stuff. Still some of the best memes out there. I think this is a very structurally flawed film, even if it is a movie that has a lot of nostalgia for me. I think it's better than a lot of people say it is, or it's had a bit of a reemergence in meme culture. So yeah, I would say that this movie is a C tier. Next is The Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield's first Spider-Man movie, and Andrew Garfield here, really strong Spider-Man. I think his Peter Parker isn't nearly as good or as funny or as endearing as Tobey Maguire's. They were going for a bit darker, a little bit more edgy, late 2000s, early 2010s style. After post-Dark Knight, everybody wanted to have a little bit darker gray or blue coloring over the top of the film. The Lizard is a really weak villain. Overall, the plot structure is nothing interesting or unique. It was buried, especially in 2012, amongst a ton of other great comic book movies that year with The Dark Knight Rises, and then you also had The Avengers. So The Amazing Spider-Man's always kind of felt like an afterthought, and I think this movie is too safe to really ever stand out. I'm going to put The Amazing Spider-Man in C tier also. I think it's a better movie than Spider-Man 3, but it's also one that I don't find nearly as interesting or fun to rewatch. Next is Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I think is the only Spider-Man movie that's just a complete mess. This movie, it top to bottom, just so many ideas, so many things that just don't ever really work. A lot of ideas started here setting up for other spin-offs and sequels that never end up coming out. There are things that are just thrown in here that you're supposed to care about, but really no history is ever built up for that. Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin, or Harry Osborn, was a character that really should have been built up in the other movies. It kind of comes out of nowhere. But the thing that glued together the first one, and I praised Andrew Garfield when talking about the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. Here, it's Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. She's also really good in the first one, but it's here that you really get attached to the Gwen Stacy Peter Parker relationship. I thought they worked really well together. Also, the costume is pretty good. Overall, this movie is the worst, I think, out of all of the Spider-Man movies. I feel harsh putting it in mega crap. So it took a while, but we finally got Spider-Man Homecoming, which was the introduction of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or at least the first time we had gotten him in a feature film outside of his cameo / small appearance in Captain America Civil War. It was a new take on Spider-Man, going back to kind of the high school era Spider-Man. A lot of people get mistaken that Spider-Man's always been this high school kid. In the original Stan Lee, Steve Ditko comics, he's like a high school senior. It's actually closer to the age we see Tobey Maguire than Tom Holland. It's just that Tobey Maguire and all the kids that go to his high school look way older than high school. I think Homecoming fits perfectly into the MCU Phase 3. It fits nicely with stuff like Iron Man and all the references to the rest of the Avengers. Spider-Man, who exists in this world versus the early comics, in a world with these high-profile heroes, with heroes that he wants to aspire to and live up to, which I think makes a lot of sense for an MCU Spider-Man. And I do think Tom Holland's captured the spirit of Spider-Man extremely well. He has the goofiness of the Tobey Maguire Peter Parker with kind of the more vibrant quippiness of Andrew Garfield. So I do think he is a pretty great marriage of both. Of course, Michael Keaton's Vulture is wonderful. There's also the one shot at the end of the film that mirrors the If This Be My Destiny comic by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, which is one of my favorite Spider-Man stories. So I've always really loved this film. I'm actually going to drop this one up in A tier. I'll put it right above the original Spider-Man. So now we're getting to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the first of the animated Spider-Man movies, and critics loved it. It won Best Animated Feature. Audiences loved it. And for me, the animation is unbelievable. The different frame rates they're able to incorporate, the way they're able to make it look and feel like a comic book was so cool. Bringing in a lot of Spider-Man cameos and references to things and really building out that world was awesome. Finally getting to see Miles Morales brought to life in a visual medium outside of comics was really cool. This has a great story. It is a simple story. I think that's something for me that's always kept me a bit away from like being one of those people that says it's one of the greatest comic book movies ever. But for me, it just felt like something, as a big comic book fan, I've read this story before many times. I've seen it before in other multiverse style stories. It just didn't feel as unique as I felt like the world was going with it, you know? So I do love this movie. I'm still going to put it in A, but for me, it's actually like right behind the original Spider-Man. I still prefer watching the original Spider-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming. I know that might be a hot take. After that, we got Spider-Man Far From Home. Far From Home took Spider-Man out of New York for like the first time ever and brought him to a bunch of countries in Europe. So many cool settings to throw Spider-Man in, and Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio I thought was a great villain. Bringing back J. Jonah Jameson here was also nice. I forgot to mention him with the first Spider-Man trilogy. One of my favorite parts of that trilogy. J.K. Simmons is amazing. There's a lot of great action, and this is a really good story, a strong epilogue to Avengers Endgame. There are a few structural things that I have a problem with this. I know if you watch my MCU tier list, I'm not a big fan of some of the exposition, the clunky dumps of exposition and plotting. And as unique as this movie is for throwing Spider-Man in all these settings, I think this is the story out of the three that feels the least endearing to me emotionally. I do think they do a great job with Tom Holland and Zendaya's relationship, with the furthering of the Peter MJ relationship. All of that works really well. But overall, I find Homecoming and No Way Home to be a bit stronger when it comes to the characterization of Spider-Man. Still really like this movie a lot. I'm putting it in B, tally ho, which then gets me to Spider-Man No Way Home. I really love No Way Home. I think it's a wonderful movie. It captures a lot of what makes Spider-Man great. There's a lot of emotion here. It really digs into the Spider-Man franchise, and it's a really rewarding kind of conclusion for all of the Spider-Man stuff we had seen, maybe outside of the Spider-Verse. Doctor Strange is a great addition to this. MJ's great. Ned's great. Spider-Man 2's got the nostalgia. It's got the funniness. It's got the quips. I think it's more inherently Spider-Man, but Spider-Man No Way Home is such a celebration of Spider-Man. It is really tough to pick. I think I'll go with Spider-Man 2 ahead, though, just. So we get to the newest movie, the one you guys are probably all watching this tier list for, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I saw this movie twice in 2 days. This is an incredible movie. As much as I felt like I was a little off the bandwagon with Into the Spider-Verse, I got the hype around the animation. I didn't really get the hype on why everybody thought the story was so revolutionary. Here, this was on a whole nother level. The storytelling here, the emphasis on character is expanded to not just Miles, but Miles is even better here than he was in the first one. But Gwen is incredible here. All the Spider-Mans are awesome. The relationships with Miles' parents, really diving into their lives, getting moments where we just get to see Officer Morales or Rio Morales talking, getting to reflect on Aaron Davis's death after the first one, and Miles' strong relationship with his uncle and his family. And this is a very family-oriented movie, a movie that really explores what it means to have your immediate family not really understand anything about what you do, but also have all these other people who understand what you do, but they don't want you to be happy. It's a movie that really tries to find that line, and I loved it. I'm not going to try to spoil any big plot points here, but there are minor spoilers in this next part if you are a little concerned about hearing anything about this movie. The ending was a little jarring to me. I'm not going to spoil what happens in the ending, but it does leave on a cliffhanger. The second time I saw it, I thought it worked a lot better. This is a movie that flows so nicely. For 2.5 hours almost, this movie just keeps going. It's constantly locking you in. When you get to towards the end, I felt like I'm ready for another hour of this movie. Has it only been an hour? I thought this was a 2.5 hour movie. This movie just flies by. There's so many great things done here. The Spot is a wonderful villain, the way they've used him. Overall, I cannot wait to see Beyond the Spider-Verse. This is going to be an incredible trilogy. Arguably, quality-wise, probably going to be the best Spider-Man trilogy. I'm actually really torn with Across the Spider-Verse. I do think it's better than No Way Home. I think it is better than Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2, though, I gotta leave it at the top as my personal favorite Spider-Man movie. I've watched that movie endlessly, but Across the Spider-Verse is really the only thing that's gotten close to like actually knocking it off. So thank you so much for watching this tier list. Of course, make sure you're hitting that like button, you're subscribing to the channel, you're commenting below, letting me know what you thought of my rankings. Give me your rankings. If you want to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, hit me up in the comments. I will respond. If you haven't checked out my tier list of the MCU, it was my midway through the year update. I do 2 updates a year for the MCU tier list. Make sure you're checking that out. It has Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in it. May has been an incredibly busy month for me, and so I haven't had the content that I'm hoping to get out here in June. So I will be pushing more and more content. I know I say that every time, but I'm really trying to expand this channel. I want to expand this channel. I have a lot of things planned for updates with more Star Wars timelines, books and comics timelines. I promised a top 10 Star Wars video games of all time. I am working on that. I'm also working on my top 10 Legend of Zelda video games of all time. I have a lot of other tier lists, other lore videos, other things coming. Make sure you're checking out the channel. You're staying locked in. You're subscribed, so you get the latest information when I post new videos. My Star Wars channel, Star Wars Lads, that's where I'm doing Star Wars stuff every single week. We're doing live streams, we have shorts, we have a community bracket going on. You can vote in the polls for your favorite Star Wars characters. Make sure you're checking that channel out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.